Hey everyone, I am TheChosenOneLegend here, as always joined by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Kai, also known as Fascurreyn.
And welcome back to the BunchaJokahs podcast, where we're here to talk about gaming news from the past month. And once again, all building up towards the Switch 2. Not a grand amount of things happening. We didn't even get that rumoured February Direct I was kind of hoping for, but hey ho, there's some interesting bits. We roll with the punches. How's your February been, Kai? It's been chill?
Yeah, it's been not too bad. There's been, a couple different things to look at and play in this time. So it's been sort of lukewarm, I guess.
Yeah, it's never really... Well, I was going to say it's never really a peak month. Usually, actually, we do get a February Direct. So I guess usually it is kind of a high point. But in the meantime, April's going to be where all that shit kicks off. So we just got to deal with the scraps until then. But we've got some good ones. And of course, as always, time to get through that backlog. So let's get on then with the first segment of the podcast, which is Can't Have a Podcast Without News, baby, where we go over the said news highlights. And I say highlights, starting things off, we have the Sony State of Play in lieu of the Nintendo Direct. And yeah, we were just discussing before this podcast started, can we even remember a single game that was in it? And I think that about sums it up, right?
I found a really good summary as I went and looked at the State of Play video, and the top comment for me is just someone saying, in asterisk, opens fridge, close fridge.
Yeah.
It is that feeling. You're like, man, I'm really starving for some games. Let's look what's in here, and it's like, okay.
Never mind.
There was some, good stuff, to be fair. It's just, I don't think there's anything mind-blowing. I mean, there was a lot of stuff where, it was good, but we either knew of it or we'd seen it before, stuff like the Okami thing.
Yeah.
Borderlands 4, stuff like Dave the Diver was back again, because that's I think that's one of their ones that they just love showing a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's...
and then stuff Days Gone Remastered was a really cool one, I thought, because I do have that, but even then it's just a remaster. It's not crazy.
Yeah, we watched it together in voice chat, a bunch of us, and we were saying, hey, this looks kind of interesting. A lot of it wasn't bad to watch. It wasn't a slog. It was well paced. They were relatively quick through them. But also, in hindsight, though, just so much of them blend together. I feel like there are so many gritty-looking, fast-paced action games. One that I noted down.
All very sci-fi as well, aren't they?
yeah, a lot of that sort of element to it. There was one I wrote down called Tides of Annihilation, which looked kind of cool, and we all thought that looked cool at the time, but again, it sort of blended with the rest. I can't now tell you anything specific about it. There was actually the Warriors roguelike game. I think it's a roguelike. That's kind of a neat idea. It's not the Xenoblade Warriors we want, but hey, that stood out at least.
Yeah, because there's a really popular genre of games on Steam. I don't remember what it's called. I don't know if bullet hell is the right term, but basically it's where you're in the middle of a huge amount of enemies and you just get stronger and fight them all.
Yeah.
Which comes in various forms. And this is basically that, but with the Warriors gameplay style, which I really like. So it's actually, it's a really, really good idea. So that was a bit of a highlight for me.
And I guess I have to mention Sonic Cross Worlds, I think, the racing game, which, hey, that looks pretty decent. It looks like they're going back to sort of the Sonic and Sega Transformed series, which I played the first one of. It's pretty fun. Let's be real, if it comes out at the same time as Mario Kart 9, it's getting buried, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of this, is a lot of these games, if you were to look at them on their own, you'd probably go, you know what, that's actually quite good.
Yeah.
But so many of them, like you say, do have that same gritty, dark style, sci-fi elements, all the same art style. And it's just it does bog it down because you just, you switch off when you're seeing the same thing over and over again. So for a lot of them, it just happens. I mean, even some of them, there's Lies of P Overture was one of the things that they announced, and
looks good.
Lies of P was a really, really highly rated game, really popular. And that on its own is probably a really good trailer, but I don't think any of us took a second look at it when it's mixed in with all the other games that are similarly dark.
Yeah,
It
it's a good
just
point.
bogs them down when these things individually would be brilliant, or at least if you space them out properly between sort of different styles of games.
Yeah, because usually, like the idea of these sort of directs and presentations is you're not going to be interested in every game, but it gives you exposure to games you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Games that I wouldn't have checked a Twitter trailer
Yeah.
for, but because it's in the direct, it catches my eye. Things like A Short Hike, years back that I ended up playing. But like you say, in this case, it actually is a detriment where if I just saw it on Twitter on its own, yeah, Lies of P DLC, like, hey, that's interesting, people love that game. Here, it looked the exact same as about 4 other games in the presentation. It probably isn't, it just looked like it. So, it kind of,
Yeah.
it shows,
It's very true.
still, we've been saying this since we started the podcast, like, 4 years ago, but even, nearly 5, bloody hell, but even beyond our bias for Nintendo, it's quite clear that no other company has the presentation formula down as well as they do. Like, it's just, you can get good ones, and there are good games, but it's still just not the same, is it?
Yeah, no, I mean, even another one I've just realised here. I just remembered that they announced another Dark Pictures anthology game, which
Oh, yeah?
I've sort of been waiting for a while now. But again, I think this one is sort of a little bit more by bad luck, but this one is a set in space on a spaceship kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just got lost. It just got completely lost in all the other things that look the same. And if I didn't know already that, like, I already knew in advance that was what the theme of the game was going to be. If I didn't know that, even as a fan of the series, I would not have realised that was in there, like, upon watching it, just because it was the same as everything else. So it's just that style.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll refine it over time, but I think it's just because their IPs are, it's the way that it's all shaped. I think it's a very difficult nut for them to crack. I mean, I think the real funny one for us at the end was there was that trailer at the very end for the game. Was it Saros? I think it's called.
Yeah.
Where it was like this really, really cool cinematic of a guy standing in front of like a huge, like orange light. Amazing graphics, looks amazing. But we've never seen this series before. We don't know what any of this means. Beside the fact that it's like, visually it looks good. Like, there was nothing, no action, there was no story, there was nothing said. And for a game, let's say this was a sequel of something we were familiar with, that would be like, oh my god, this is really, really hype. Kind of like the first Ultimate trailer, Smash Ultimate.
Yep. Prime 4, that kind of thing.
Because no one has seen this series before, knows what it is, knows what the premise is behind any of this. We're like, okay, like,
And that's what they ended on,
like, it looks
right?
cool. Yeah, that's what they ended on, and it's like, you can't... Again, they're kind of looking at that and going, oh yeah, that's a really good finisher. And it would have been if anyone knew what it was in the first place.
Yep.
Like, they've almost got it, but they're just missing that trick at the end, like, understanding why it causes excitement. Don't get me wrong, it looks phenomenal, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah, they're
working on it, I'm sure.
They're still ironing out the kinks. We'll see if there's anything more they have down the line for the year, because I'm not going to lie, I can't think of much PlayStation that I'm hyped for right now. Like, I can't think of a specific game off the top of my head. But, hey, again...
I've got Slay the Spire 2 and Astro World, or the new one, and that's it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's the backlog, isn't it? That's the main thing. But, until then, let's move on to some Nintendo news. But, kind of... I don't want to say down Nintendo news. It's kind of interesting, though. They announced that they are getting rid of the golden coins, which are the things you get for game purchases, both physical and digital, where each coin is worth like a penny, and you can use them to get discounts off your games. It's not much, but I mean, over the years, I must have got at least, like 50 quid or something, or 60 quid's worth of points built up from 7 years of buying Switch games and stuff. It's kind of rough to see that go in a way, but also the fact that it's ending later this month, like a week before the Switch 2 presentation. Do you think there might be a new system in place? Like, I kind of feel like it, but...
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those standard things that happens when they move from one console to another, so I'm
Yeah.
not too I don't feel very strongly about it in either way. It's just like, okay, they were going to do this. It is what it is. Like, it's a shame to see it go, but it was always going to happen. So,
Yeah.
I do wonder, how much do you think you saved on these points? Because I've never paid attention to them. Like, I just use them, obviously, when I get them, like most people, but
Yeah.
I've never tracked it.
Yeah, I've no tracking of it. It's exactly the same as you. I think you get every physical game you buy. Is it like 50p or something? Maybe it's a bit less.
I'm not sure.
Because you get more for digital purchases, and there have been things where they do bonuses where like I got a set of vouchers because they had double points, which meant I got like 15 quid's worth of points for that purchase, which isn't an £80 purchase of 2 games, which isn't bad. So over the years, I do think it's probably less than 100 quid, but maybe more than 50 for me, which it's not. It's good, but that's over like nearly 8 years, so I'm not really losing out much money here. I think people overreact when they saw this. Some people were like, "It's doom and gloom. It's gone. It was a great system." It's like, it's pennies, Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if they have some sort of similar new reward system coming to the Switch 2. Like, the timing is too uncanny for it to not be a coincidence, I figure, but I wouldn't be too upset if there wasn't something like it on the Switch 2, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
The only...
I think it's just a matter of time, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, PlayStation has a kind of similar one, but you have to have a certain amount of points at a time to buy money. You need to buy like a £5 voucher, and I never spend enough on PlayStation to even earn that. So, it's not like the other places have anything great in store anyway. The other
That's a good point.
Sort of thing along those lines is that they announced that Switch 2 is not supporting the game vouchers, at least for Switch 2 exclusives, which are the thing where you spend 80 quid and you get 2 games, which is cheaper than they would be individually on the digital. To be honest, often you can get them cheaper than that physical anyway, so
yeah.
I rarely use these, and also I wouldn't be surprised if Switch 2 games are more expensive, so that's why they're not included. It just kind of makes sense to me. I'm not too up in arms about this one either.
Yeah, it is what it is. Sucks a little bit, but hey, we got most of our use out of it anyway. Like, as we move on to the Switch 2, it's just, like I say, they might replace it with a new system, and yeah, the gold points would be pretty useless anyway, so it makes sense.
But hey, platinum points are still here. You can use those to get your Switch profile icons, and honestly, I care about that more. I'm not gonna lie. So I like my
Are they
Xenoblade.
the same ones that you can use to buy little merch things?
You can,
Or are they
yeah.
different? I can never tell, because I bought little triangle strategy pins when they came out, and I love them. So
Yeah, no, there's those as
yeah,
well, platinum
it's
points.
pretty
Yeah,
cool.
so they still have their uses. I think that was like Xenoblade. You can get like, I didn't get it, but like Mio's Diary or something was one of them maybe.
Yeah, I didn't realise until they were sold out. I was
Yeah,
so sad
same
about that.
here. But I'm still salty at Nintendo when they didn't send me my Xenoblade keychain anyway. I don't trust them. But no, yeah. So we'll see what happens with the Switch 2. Obviously, come April, we'll see what happens there. But nothing too big. And in the meantime, our final bit of news is a presentation that I suppose is mildly better than the low bar of the PlayStation presentation, and that's Pokemon. We got our Pokemon Presents today. And I guess before we talk specifically about ZA, how did you find the overall presentation? That was just an hour ago for us. It was quite recent.
I did come to a small realization, in a sense, of we were talking about how the state of play is kind of difficult to follow because of how many games look the same.
Yeah.
I guess when you've got a bunch of games from the exact same series that you're announcing in a row, you do kind of get the same effect. To be fair, they do try and vary the art style, and I definitely appreciate that. Like, they do try. But it's inevitable that when you're showing off the same series for 20 minutes, there's going to be a lot of overlap. To be honest, I probably didn't like the first half. I think I liked the first half of the trailer more than most people. I know a lot of people just don't care about the mobile games, and they went through them fast. And it was something you mentioned of they know that people aren't really interested in them, but they should still mention them. And they worked through that first half of the Direct very, very quickly.
Yeah, they did.
So that was cool. But yeah, I don't mind that they're showing off all these little extra things they do. I think, a lot of them are quite cool, like their Pokemon Unite, being their sort of League of Legends game. It's cool to see that going on, and their mobile games and all of this. And then obviously one of the big ones being Pokemon Champions, which I'm not 100% sure what that is, but I think we'll figure it out soon.
Yeah,
I actually don't mind that they're just showing off all these things and going like, here's all the different ways to interact with this cool like premise that we've been, making the most of for the last 20 odd years.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot better this year than some previous years, where they have like dragged out the mobile sections and spent way too much time. But they did get the pacing. I do still think like it feels like they're only there because it's Pokemon Day and we have to do a Pokemon presentation, right? When really, all of those felt like they should be Twitter updates. I don't know, it just sort of felt like very minor mobile stuff that only people who are following those accounts in the first place really care about. But they were harmless here, and
yeah, it doesn't hurt.
And it was, I don't know, that new thing, Pokemon Championships or whatever, looked, I mean, maybe it's like a Pokemon Stadium style game. I'm not going to play it, but I respect it coming to mobile and Switch, so that's sort of it seems like it fits with like the Pokemon Home idea of have all your Pokemon in this game and compete against each other and that kind of thing. Yeah, that seems fitting. I feel like to sort of justify its existence as a presentation as opposed to individual announcements, it needed like one more thing. And I don't think we're ready for like a new gen yet, or even Black and White remakes yet, but something like a spin-off, or even as simple as here's Pokemon on NSO, which for some reason still isn't there yet. I think it needed like one small thing there, just to give it a bit more worth, other than just.
I mean, that's what Carl's thought, right? And I think that was actually good. That was a very good guess from what the trailer had. And I think that why have they not done that yet? Just take like
exactly
gens 1 through 3 even, and just be like, hey, they're on like our own version of NSO on the Switch kind of thing. They can make their own version if they want and charge people for it. I don't think
even that. Yeah, like I think they should be on NSO, but it's better than nothing. Yeah, even if you make it so they're included only on the more expensive tier of NSO or something, despite being Game Boy games, like whatever. People want that, but and it would be a good way to keep people going whilst they're taking their time with ZA, because that's not coming until later this year, it seems. But as it is, like the presentation was fine, inoffensive, I think is the best way of putting it. And
yeah, I mean, I will say that thing about Pokemon Champions did stick with me. The fact that they've got it, they showed it off being on mobile.
Yeah.
At first I thought, man, have they had a fight with Nintendo? Like, is that what's happening here? But no, I just think they realised, like, hey, they're like biggest franchise in the world or something along those lines.
There's a market, yeah.
They need it to be on mobile if they want to keep up. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what kind of game this is. It looks like it could be Pokemon Stadium, but if you didn't know, there's a game called Pokemon Showdown online. And it's not official in any way to my knowledge. It's like a fan thing where basically it's completely disconnected from everything else. It is just you go in, you can build your Pokemon however you want, and then you can play like ranked matches of it. So that's where like really competitive gameplay is done.
Yeah.
And I thought they were making an official version of that, which I think would, be kind of popular. And it looks like they're not exactly doing that. They're just making it so that you can do normal battles from your phone. Like, that just seems to be the main draw. Which I do think undermines the point of the Switch, but again, it just seems like they're trying to make the base game more approachable. Which is fine. So I kind of see it. I think that was meant to be their big thing that you mentioned, but again, they were sort of a little bit too vague to actually say one way or the other.
It kind of needed a bit more confirmation on it, a little bit of gameplay going on. But ultimately, the main event that we were waiting for was Legends ZA actually getting some gameplay here, and this. I think it looks pretty good. It seems that rather than having like an open sort of older style wild area to explore. You're just exploring sort of like the city of Lumios itself and different parts of that, and that might be the entire world, which is kind of a neat idea. I mean, the thing is, we haven't actually played the Lost Legends game, right? Like, so we're not the best people to speak on this, really. But for my untrained eyes, like, yeah, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm also speaking from a point of bias of like, I've just grown less and less interested in Pokemon in the last couple of years. Basically, since Sword and Shield, I've just been like, I don't care much for it. I will say, I've got more worries than hopes going into this game.
Yeah.
I mean, Kalos was the first one I beat and like properly played. I had played, I think, White 2 before, but I didn't play it properly. And, you know, Lumios is cool, don't get me wrong, it's probably my favourite of, like, the big cities in the games. But I think if the whole region is just going to be Lumios City, but some areas have vague bits of grass and whatever, I'm a little worried. The main issue I had with Legends Arceus was they did not really know how to make environments. I think we've been given too much sort of treat from Monolith Soft with knowing how to make good, cool open worlds, and even things like Mario Odyssey that do it well. I'm worried that this game is going to look very dull when you actually play it, because you're just surrounded by big buildings with occasional grass on the ground.
The visuals certainly
don't think it's going to land.
They're classified Pokemon visuals nowadays, right? And I think even Legends Arceus had sort of like a unique kind of pastel style to it a little bit. It was still murky, but I feel like they kind of covered their bases a little bit with that. Whereas this looks a little less stylized, so it does look a bit more bland. And even Under the Sinjin Alkai, I just saw a thing that's meant to be like a map of Lumios, if I can even find it.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
I do think that the models look high quality, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's just that I think the environment's going to look quite dull.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like, you know, the character designs, like I like the new pro tags. I like sort of the looks of the cast around them and that. We didn't really see any new Pokemon, but the general gist of things, like, yeah, this looks pretty solid. It's just like it's the common problem that's always been with Pokemon falling slightly short of where it should be, right? For how big a franchise it is.
It's off. Like, something is still off with all of this, and that's what worries me. Like, even the thing of like, oh look, you can jump between buildings, and I'm just looking at that and going, yeah, that just looks jank. Off the bat, like that's either going to be really jank, or in a more likely case, it's just going to be really restrained and like mean nothing.
We've had
that's the map. That's crazy.
Yeah, and looking at the map of Lumios here, like, it looks all very similar, doesn't it? There's no variety in terrain. You kind of wonder how this game's going to... Like, people have theorised there might be catacombs, because Paris has famously, like, catacombs under them and that. That's a cool idea. Not confirmed, it's just a theory. But other than that, like, how much else is there? Are we going to leave the city at all? I like the idea of like the whole world being this big city, but when it looks as it is, and you kind of wonder, is it going to wear thin quite quickly? And ultimately, again, I'm probably not going to pick this up anyway. If I was going to pick up a Pokemon game, I think I'd try out Arceus, to be honest. That seems the most interesting one of the recent to me. But it's I'm the wrong audience for this. Ultimately, maybe we should have Samm on again. I mean, we had fun making like for the previous Arceus game, a Legends game, we made like our own regional forms, right? Samm drew up concepts for those. So, you know, maybe we could do something like that. But...
we could try it. I will tell you right now, I will just have Farfetch'd, but he's got a baguette instead of a leaf.
That must already exist, but we'll make Samm draw it anyway. So.
Yeah, it's just, I don't have a lot of hopes for this. I mean, the characters look fine, but they're not particularly exciting. The rival looks cool. I mean, they've got AZ. If you don't know, AZ was like a sort of almost a mythological character from XY. He was one of the characters who was meant to have a lot of lore, and he did. but then it was like, oh man, yeah, I can't wait for him to come back. Everyone was saying in this game that he was going to be like a key character if you're going to the past. And he's just like, what is he? Was he like an innkeeper? Is that
Yeah,
something
and
like that?
it seems that it's actually people are thinking it's set afterwards. You know, it's not even a going back in time like Legends, the first
it's
Legends
not
did.
even got that cool factor to it.
So it's I think really what it is it kind of it didn't do anything to like blow me away. I think actually the gameplay where you can move the Pokemon around and actually dodge moves a bit. It seems there seems to be some interesting stuff going on there. That's maybe the most interesting part of this, but it's nothing.
Well, I've got thoughts on the
mind-blowing.
gameplay. Yeah,
I think I know what you're going to say, Hikai. Go for
yeah,
it.
exactly. Off the bat, I mean, they were already trying to make the gameplay dynamic with Legends Arceus.
Yeah,
And they did I can't remember, they changed a lot of effects in that game. I think they changed how sleep works, and they changed like the freezing status to be different and like better, and I don't know, they changed stuff like that, and that was really cool. And I think they had a thing where you could change between basically a fast and a strong style, and that would change the turn order. So there were little things like that where I was like, oh, that's really cool. And it's clear that they're trying to make the game more dynamic, you know, with all the dodging that you did in Legends Arceus. And they're trying to do more of that here, where it's like, oh yeah, the Pokemon move around and stuff like that. And it's like, man, I mean, I'm obsessed with Ni no Kuni, obviously, but like, it feels like they're trying to do something similar to that, but they just still haven't got it. It still looks off, it looks jank, and it just looks like it's going to be a little bit pointless. I mean, they're filling up the UI really heavily at certain points, and it's just like, no, just genuinely just copy Ni no Kuni and like, you know, shift little bits of that around. This looks like it's going to break.
yeah.
You know, the characters look really off. It's just, it does not hit me right at all. I really don't like it.
Even like the new starters we've got, whereas, you know, Legends Arceus had like one from each different region, which is really cool. Here we've got 2 of them are Gen 2 starters, right? And then
That's a massive gripe for me. I love it being organised and uniform. I like when they do one of 3 different regions. I like when all 3 are from the same region. Having 2 from the same region and 1 different?
Yeah.
Oh, I do not like that.
Just feels off.
That messes with my brain really heavy.
It's not like there aren't, you know, like 7 other options to pick from, 8 or whatever at this point. It's yeah.
Something like that.
So it's
so annoying.
Odd
There was no
decision.
need for that.
It's ultimately, I think, it looks like it's exact level of what I expected from Pokemon, and it's not really doing anything less, I don't think, but it's certainly not doing anything more. So it's, as a person who's not been into recent Pokemon, or I haven't really played one in years, since X and Y actually, and I was never that into it in the first place, but this isn't doing anything that's going to sell me. It looks like it'll be fine probably, and people will probably like it, but that's about all I can say really. There's not much more. We'll keep track of it, we'll see if any, you know, apparently it's coming later down the year, so there's time for them to improve things and that, but they're not going to. Like, it's gonna look the same, isn't it? So
yeah, it just winds me up, because like these games, you know, they look good if this were a small development team, right? This would look really good if it were a small development team. If it was sort of a medium-sized or sort of a small AAA company, then yeah, this looks pretty good still. But to be the biggest sort of franchise in the world, you know, one of the most anticipated games, and this is what you come out with, it's like, you know, they're not keeping up like they used to in the DS era. I think since, you know, the mainline series has been somewhat keeping up, but it just, they're missing something, you know, they're missing that little bit of refinement. And maybe that's a development time thing. I completely sympathise that that's obviously been a thing, but they have had longer on this game, and it still just isn't there.
I think it comes.
I can say I won't be picking this up.
I think it comes down to, again, that they're lacking that like monolith soft support that like they had for Breath of the Wild and Tears, and of course the Xenoblade games. You know, they know how to make a big sort of open exploration game work on the Switch, but not that they should make every game, but clearly they show that it can be done. So Pokemon's gonna do its thing. As
I'd
always.
really want one of the PlayStation teams to get on this, to be honest. Like, get someone like, I don't know, I'm throwing names out there, like Square Enix on this kind of series.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
Whatever the team was that made Octopath and Triangle Strategy, like, obviously, the visual side of things, maybe, that's another story. But in terms of knowing how to make good gameplay, like, pull something from that. I don't know why they haven't.
We'll see how it turns out.
Like
but again, we probably won't be covering it much from this point anyway. Beyond, hey, new trailer looks the same. But
yeah, pretty much.
As for what we have been playing, let's move on to our next segment of the podcast. Let's try and get more positivity here for Games Time, baby. And I guess I'll start things off here with two kind of things. A very brief mention that I played I finished NieR Replicant, which I mentioned last time. I did like the final ending,
nice.
And like it's insane that this is so missable. The average player would not know this exists. Thank goodness I had Oliver, our friend, who like guided me through things, because the final ending is like so important and so great. It's generally like peak NieR, peak gaming in general.
What, and it's easily missable?
Very easily missable. Like, not even beyond
Mad.
Just sort of like, it's a little obscure. Like, even like a quotation marks, hardcore gamer completionist would not realise this is a thing, It's,
Interesting.
It's insane how missable it is. Most of the other endings, like, you could miss, but it guides you to them relatively, You might just need a bit of support, but if you're going to play Replicant, like, have someone who's played the game let you know when you're done, because you're not done when you think you are. But
I mean, I'm still put off by the fact that I was like, hey, which one's the first one? And I did not get an answer. It was like, oh God.
To put it quite simply for you, Kai, Replicant is the first one. It's just technically... there's a remake that came out after Automata, So technically it's more recently, but it's a remake of the first one. So
I'm just gonna trust you guys on which one to buy.
Well, okay, I can't believe I'm doing this now on the podcast, but screw it, we'll do it. Basically, it kind of doesn't matter. Automata's like technically a sequel, but in the sense that it takes place in the same world, like hundreds or thousands of years later. There's no real story connection. It's just there's some lore, but it's inconsequential which one you play first. And you're probably just going to play Automata first because that's on the Switch and you don't really stream from your PlayStation, I figure. But
is the other one not out on Switch? Okay, that does it then.
Yeah. So and that's fine. It's sort of it doesn't really matter which you go for first anyway. They're largely separate. But but yeah, like the ending of Replicant, I think Automata's the better game in general, but the ending of Replicant reaches those heights for sure. Just you gotta make sure you know what to do to get it, but when you do, yeah, despite all the troubles of like redoing shit the game has, all sort of the backtracking and stuff, which is a major issue, it's worth it, I'll say. Like, they know what they're doing with some of the greatest characters I've seen in general. Some really great voice acting and payoff for like running jokes and stuff. It's fantastic. But why don't you? I'll take a break here, Kai. Why don't you give us a game you've been playing?
Well, I'll just give my own small update. Yeah, I've been playing Mario and Luigi Brothership.
Yes.
I'm about 80% through the game, if I had to guess. And yeah, it's just a good time. It's just a good, little Mario and Luigi RPG. I don't think it's as good as maybe some of the others in the series. In some aspects, but in others it's, I will say, the game's difficult in areas. Like, obviously it starts off easy, but I was about halfway through the game and I was realising, like, wow, I'm struggling in some of these fights. The enemies hit, hard and fast. They were pretty interesting. So, the gameplay's good. I think, the enemy attacks are all quite interesting. The attacks that the bros have is always good. They've sort of spruced those up as they always do. The story is definitely the worst I've seen in the series, I think. It's just very boring, very predictable. The characters are all very, like, meh. You know,
That's a shame.
they're all just. It feels like every character is filler, pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
And there were some characters where, like, basically, again, the whole thing of the game is you go onto all these little islands. So rather than, like, you know, longer areas and story, it's like all these little mini adventure things that you do, little arcs and whatever. And a lot of the time, you'd go on an island, you'd meet a character and be like, okay, that was a cool character to meet. All right, that story's done. And then they join you, like, for the next, like, 20 hours of story. And it's like, no, you were good, just a good little character for that very brief moment. I don't need you to come with me.
Yeah.
That happens in places, and I will say the game is weird. So the map of the game and how it functions is very similar, weirdly enough, to Spirit Tracks. Where you slowly unlock little bits of like the water route, I guess, to sail your ship on. And you know, you go to these different islands, which are the equivalent of the stops in Spirit Tracks, and you can explore them. Some of them are bigger than others. You know, some have stories, some don't. And it's a good idea. You know, it was cool how they did it in Spirit Tracks, where you'd fight things along the way, and, you know, there were other, like, evil trains or whatever, and then, you know, every time you opened up a quadrant of the map, you'd have, you know, like 6 or 7 different things to do at times. In this game, they give that same illusion of, oh wow, there's lots of things you can do at once. You can't though. Like, it's literally one thing at a time.
Right.
It's more akin to Mario Galaxy 2's progression system, where it's just one place at a time, and then occasionally it'll be like, oh, you can choose one or the other to do first, but you've got to go back and do the other anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Illusional choice, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, don't try and pretend to me like this is going to be an open world game and then not do it. I'd rather you just forego that part in favour of making the story more interesting.
Yeah.
Like, it's trying to pretend like it's open world, and the map's like, oh, look how clear this is, and then it's like, no, you're not letting me do things in my order, so it's pointless. Like, I don't mind if it's linear, just don't pretend.
Yeah.
And that kind of annoys me in bits. So, yeah, I've kind of realised that I'm 80% through the story, and I'm like, it's been fine, but nothing, like, outstanding has really happened yet. You know, I feel like one of the really good things about some Mario and Luigi games is that, even though you can tell, you know, it's all obviously going to build up towards the end, lots of cool things happen on the way. Yeah. And I feel like less cool things have happened on the way this time. But I don't know, I mean, I'm still sort of going through it, so my thoughts may change, and I will say, despite all of that, I am still having a very good time with it. Like I say, the gameplay is fun, there's some very cool ideas in there for different things that you can do. The Bros attacks are way better than the rest of the series in terms of just their design. When you complete an attack with an excellent finish, so basically getting it perfect, normally in the other games it's just like, oh, you got excellent, well done. In this one, if you get an excellent, there's like an extra bonus attack at the end of it that looks really like it's a sort of a spectacle every time, and that's really fun. Makes it satisfying to know that you're good at the game. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I need to really get to the end of it to give proper thoughts, but it's an interesting one so far. I need to keep playing.
That sort of tracks with the general opinion I've heard of it. It's like, yeah, it's a good game. And that's it. Like, yeah, it's a good game. It's not going to blow your mind, but it's a fun way to pass time. You know, that kind of thing. I do have to ask: is Bowser funny? Like, that's got to be. That's not a good sign. That reaction is not good.
I will say, one of the good things is, I guess it's not really a spoiler, but at a certain point in the game, like, Bowser, you know, then shows up and is relevant. Yeah. And as well as Bowser's minions. And there's an island that has a lot of Bowser's minions on that you can kind of infiltrate. This is one of the best portrayals of Bowser's minions, because they're just like, you know, you can go into their little camp and they're just really chill. Like, they take over an island, and you sort of talk to the villagers and try to free them, and they're like, oh no, they're really chill. Like, they help us out. We were struggling, and they just, you know,
oh, wow.
We're brothers now.
Yeah.
So actually, Bowser's minions, this is one of their best games. Bowser himself is like, he's not really that funny, but he's got more of like that father vibe that he has. that he's been sort of, he's had in a couple of games lately.
Yeah.
So not really funny, but he is pleasant still.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. One I'm maybe interested in down the line. I still haven't played like Bowser's Inside Story, which is I did watch on YouTube recently, but yeah, glad to hear it's decent. And I suppose for my next game to talk about, which is Star Wars Outlaws, which I meant to get like way back in September, but too many damn games came out along then. I don't know what they were doing there with like the new Zelda game and Edgeworth Investigation. Still haven't got that. God damn it. But yeah, got around to Star Wars Outlaws, and it's like honestly, it's a pretty fun game. I think it definitely is one of those where I like it more because it's Star Wars and I'm a Star Wars fan. There are inherent gameplay problems, and in general, compared to like the Jedi games where you explore, use a lightsaber combat, that kind of stuff, being like in this game you're like a scoundrel working with like sort of smuggling crews and sort of the underground of the Star Wars galaxy, sort of crime syndicates. Less my kind of speed as a game, but it's fun for what it is, and just in general, like, it's very impressive as like a piece of Star Wars media. Like the visuals are great. You have different planets you go to, like Tashara has like wide open plains. You have Kijimi, which is like it's entirely in like this sort of narrow, snowy cityscape. And you have Tatooine, which is like a big open desert. All the terrains look beautiful. The character models, not so much. They're kind of iffy. It's like the aliens look fine because it's Star Wars. A lot of them are aliens, but humans are very uncanny. I guess there's a particular one. Like, there's a character, one of the leaders of the crime syndicates called Kira, who's from one of the spin-off movies, played by Emilia Clarke. It took me a good while to figure out who it was because she looks nothing like Emilia Clarke. She just looks like a blur. But I don't know, you get over it. It's mostly aliens, and it is what it is. But in terms of like, I mean, just the fact that she's in it, there's loads of cool lore bits. Things like it's set between episodes 5 and 6, the movies. So you have things like you go to Jabba the Hutt's palace, and you have Han Solo frozen on the wall. There's like characters and mentions from like the books and comics that take place at that time. Things that are not important, but if you've read those, you'll recognise things and little details, like the amount of attention to detail in just like small conversations you can overhear at like a bar and that. It's crazy. And they got that feeling of like the Star Wars world perfect. The gameplay itself has a bit more problems where it's kind of, as a part of a criminal syndicate element, you are sort of infiltrating places. A lot of stealth gameplay and sort of cover shooting, that kind of thing. And it comes at a problem when the stealth gameplay isn't actually that good, when it's a lot of stealth. It's kind of a dilemma there. And I sort of had to check, like, am I just bad at this? But I checked with one of my friends, like, oh no, people say it's bad. Like, it's not just you.
Right.
So okay,
That's reassuring.
Not just a skill issue. That's probably also the case, but not just that, at least, So it's in story missions, it generally works quite well, where it feels designed around the mechanics. But any time it's just part of like a side quest or infiltrating an enemy base or something, they spot you way too easily, and when they do, they like immediately alert everyone to your location.
You might just be bad at stealth. I don't know.
I can't argue. I was trying to think of an argument for that, but I am generally bad at stealth games. When I played like Spider-Man, I'd give up after a second and just kill everyone. But
fair enough.
That's not really, knock everyone out, Spider-Man. But that's not really as much an option here, because if you get alerted, even for like a split second, your reputation with that crime syndicate goes down, and that's one of the big problems. Where there's this really cool element to the game where there are like 4 different crime syndicates you can ally with. You do like a job for one, your reputation goes up with them, but it might go down with another if you're like taking stuff from them. So you sort of have to choose.
That's a neat concept.
Yeah, you sort of have to choose who you want to be on your side, and the further up you go, you get benefits like cheaper merchandise from them. You can access their bases and collect gear for free. They give you items. But conversely, if you've got a low reputation, they'll start kicking you out of their territory, or they will send hunters to kill you if you're really bad with them, which did happen to me a few times. It's a fascinating way of doing it, which sounds really cool, but partly the fact that the stealth is so iffy that, you know, you get caught for a split second, your reputation starts going down. It's way too easy to lose it. And also things like, part of the game is exploring these sort of open environments, and you talk to like someone at a bar, you get intel, and here's something you can go to, there's a piece of armor here. It's like Breath of the Wild, you know, you see all these things, you want to go check them out on your map. That's quite cool, but half the time you're like, okay, but I can't check this out because I'm not friends with these people, so they won't let me in.
Right,
and it's the reputation system is at odds with the exploration gameplay. So it's at its core, it's fun, and the story missions, you know, the story itself is perfectly serviceable. It's Star Wars typical affair. It's good. You know, that's fun. It just needs some kinks ironed out. The kind of thing that if they get a sequel or a new game that uses this system, they're onto something that could be really fun. It just needs a little bit of work now, a bit more time in the oven all around, I think. But
yeah, that's fair.
As is, like, yeah, it's a fun Star Wars game. Honestly, I'm most mad about that. I was going to do more side content, but after I beat it, my DualSense started drifting. My second DualSense started drifting. That's both of them. It's worse than the Joy-Con, I swear. Like, I don't even play PlayStation that much, but here we are. But anyway, it's a pretty good time all around, I would say. And
well, that's good at least. That's what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. When my controller works, I have fun with it, and that's the important part. So if you're like a Star Wars fan, especially, like, yeah, you're gonna love this game. But that's pretty much it for me. So one last thing.
Do we want to pull the last one this time? What do you think on
save
timing?
It? We could save it for
depends
last
if you
time.
think we're going to have much news in March. I don't know.
Let's be real. The Direct is happening like the first week of April, the second day. Probably not. So maybe we'll save that one, I guess. That might be a good. Obviously, we'll be playing Xenoblade X next month as well, but we're not going to be finished by the end of next month. I feel like that's for certain. And that might even get its own videos, I could imagine.
Yeah.
So perhaps
Wait,
we save.
What date's the Direct? Is it the 4th?
I think it's the 2nd of April. I think.
2nd of April. Oh, we'll have our next weekly podcast out after that.
Yeah, exactly. So, our next monthly podcast, we will be set in news. Just that alone. That's a good point. Yeah.
We'll be bathing in it.
Yeah. It'll be nice after this somewhat drought happening.
Yeah.
And again, like, it feels weird. We didn't really talk about it now because the new trailers haven't really said anything new, but Xenoblade X next month, like, holy shit, new Xenoblade, that's it. That's gonna be
a
thing.
That's the only reason we didn't really cover it, because there's not that much new necessarily, but there's still some Ouroboros shenanigans going on there.
Oh, there's
theories. They've done some bios and stuff for the new characters. They're showing off a lot of stuff, like, because they have no other big games coming out, this is their big push. Which I think is a very good thing.
It is,
like,
yeah.
They just, because they're hiding so much until the Switch 2 stuff happens, this is their number one game. Never thought that in 2025 Xenoblade X would be the main game Nintendo's pushing.
Nope, but I'm all here for it.
Crazy world we live in. Yeah.
I guess, yeah, we'll call it quits for today then, yeah. We'll end it there, but thank you for talking through once again with me, Kai, and where else can people find you at?
Twitch.tv/Fascurreyn. I'm just doing a bunch of random bits at the moment before I hop into NieR.
Excellent. There'll be a link in the description below. And a link to myself, who are twitch.tv/TheChosenOneLegend, where I'm streaming the Zero Escape and failing at basic math at times. But hey, I play D&D with Kai, so he's used to me failing at basic math anyway. It's nothing new.
True.
But until then, also our friend Samm makes our thumbnails. Link to him in the description below as well. And we will see you guys in the next podcast. Take care and goodbye.
See you.